So we're going to take a quick sidebar, I guess, before I move on. And I want to talk to you about referencing data, right? Because Wesley was asking about, do you go back to old files and reference them often? And the answer is yes, it happens all the time. And I often will reference large chunks of data, like particularly this string of information. If I group that, I will often just go into a Grasshopper file, copy that whole thing, and drop it into a new one. I do it all the time. And the easy way of doing that is actually up here in this top right corner. If you click on, right here, it actually has the name of the file. But if you click in the top right corner, it brings up, right now it's just one thumbnail. But if I go into my file structure here, and where's my summer classes? Are they all just, let's see here. Let me find another one. There we go. There we go. That's a Grasshopper file. All right. So when you get into a file like this that has many, many different types of strings of data that are grouped together in very logical ways, you can then recycle all of this information by selecting and copying it into new files, right? And it becomes very, very important to be able to manage those files in a clean way. So if I need, I don't know if he did titling or anything like that on his.
Can we see what that made?
So there's a lot of references in this, but essentially I can show you the building of the facade that it emulated. It was, I forget the name of it, but it's got like a, that. So it created the facade of this building, which, you know, based on an attractor point, all of the fins of these triangles would expand and contract based on how close or how far it was from that attractor point, which would simulate the location of the sun.
So that's responsive to the sun?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's,
Made to emulate.
what's that?
It wasn't actually responding to the sun, but
Right.
but like something that moved back and forth and looked like.
Right, yeah, so you could rotate a point along the angle of the sun on any given day, or change the azimuth and angle to give it the, you know, vector trajectory of where the sunlight is coming from, and then that side of the building would open up and contract based on that particular panel's distance from that point.
Is that a shading system then?
It is, yeah, it's a sun shading system. So what I was getting at here is, like, if you have a little nugget of information that you want to copy into a new file, so I opened this file, and right now all you can see is this really crazy, totally nuts Grasshopper file. But if I just want this little nugget, I control copy, and I can click in the top right and go right back to the other file I was working on. Click on that, go in, and drop it in here, which it didn't seem to want to let me do. Oh, there it is, because it dropped it in its original spot. Okay, so that's kind of how that works.
So do you suggest that we have like a bulk file for like one project or something, and then if you want to reference different
No.
parts?
No, I don't think that you should have a bulk file for all of your different definitions. I think that you should have many files that separate nuggets of information that are, you know, complete ideas. So like this saddle patterning idea, mine is pretty large. I don't have the whole thing over there, but if I zoom out on it, and I can kind of flip my screen around and show you real quick, but, you know, this one is pretty simple. It's just every step of the way developing the process, I would copy it from one complete thought down to the next and then build more. Copy it down to the next and build more. So that way, when I'm looking back at my reference file, I know the steps that I took to build it.
Okay.
You know, because sometimes you go further down a train of thought to prove a point or to, you know, make some relevant, you know, nature apparent, and then you delete it and go back to something else.
Okay.
So I think it's very important to keep track of the steps that you take as well in a recorded file, but also to just have your completed element in one file and name it appropriately. Okay? So when it comes down to like file naming standards, you might want to have folders for different types of definitions. You might have a folder for dynamic patterning and have different types of patterns, you know, attractor points and you know, just a numerical pattern or something like that. So, and keep those all in one folder. And then geometrical generation definitions are kind of something else. So that's just an idea. Okay. Any thoughts or questions about that?